Of course, gold is always the first to rise. Then silver, well, the enthusiasm for silver, that is Asian investors' enthusiasm for investing in gold and silver, is like an erection. It can get hard at any moment. Why? Because the US dollar can go soft at any moment. It's a relative thing. This is also a new problem that COMEX is facing. Previously, COMEX encountered just such a problem, but the cycle in which this problem arises is very slow. So much so that everyone thinks this is something new. What problem is it exactly? It's that the United States, its national strength, every few decades faces a powerful challenge, the last major bull market in silver and gold. The weakness of the US dollar was because of the Soviet Union. The former Soviet Union posed a strong challenge to the United States. That was in the 1970s and the 1980s, at the peak of the Cold War. The Soviet Union's national strength was rising rapidly. The Soviet-led Warsaw Pact, its military strength, in conventional military power, it surpassed the United States, and in nuclear weapons, both in yield and deployment. It also surpassed the United States. Moreover, the US had just been defeated in the Vietnam War at that time, leaving them beaten. The US president bowed to the pressure and was forced out of office. So after the 1970s, the US dollar was actually in a very weak position. Of course, after President Reagan came to power, he used Star Wars SDI against Moscow and eventually brought down the Soviet Union. But that was something that happened 10 years later. So every time the United States faces a world-class challenge, when the global order established by the US is challenged, the US dollar always weakens, while gold always strengthens. Of course, it's always gold that is the first to strengthen every time. And after gold strengthens, silver thinks, I can do it too, so it also starts to rise. But then it gets its legs broken. Its legs are broken. Last time, even gold got its legs broken too. It was hit hard. Last time, gold's legs were broken for 20 years. From the 1980s, gold's legs were broken all the way until 2004. That was when we were growing up. In 2004, we grew up, and only then did we realize, at that time, we were in Beijing, talking about the China Gold White Paper. The China Gold White Paper that was written. China Gold was saying that gold was about to enter a century-long bull market. That was the gist of the white paper. In 2004, it was really impressive. Why was that? It was because we saw the rise of China. If China rises in the East while the West declines, if China keeps rising, sooner or later, China will become a real challenger to the US. If everything ends up being made in China, then eventually the Chinese people will realize, wealthy Chinese will come to realize, that investing in real gold and silver is more reliable than investing in US Treasury bonds. The US is actually a rogue. The US is actually a rogue. Actually, the US is a rogue because it's just a country that uses all those things from Hollywood, all those glamorous things, to arm itself, to justify itself, to make itself seem legitimate. But in reality, it has a lot of dirty things going on. Especially when you challenge the international order established by the US, the way the US behaves is just like, well, you can't really call it a rogue, but it absolutely is. Just like the king monkey in a monkey troop. Its behavior is exactly the same. Or like the alpha male lion in a pride. The behavior is exactly the same. When a young lion comes over and wants to challenge, or when a young male monkey grows up and wants to challenge, the old monkey king definitely doesn't win people over with virtue. And the US doesn't win people over with virtue either. The US usually acts as if it wins people over with virtue, like come, sit and talk. But now virtue alone won't convince anyone. So the US today, without a doubt, has once again reached that moment. And today's America seems even more divided because President Trump himself is a highly controversial figure. President Trump's actions, President Trump's words, and President Trump's so-called his past style and behavior and his previous stories have caused the American people to now be on the verge of civil war. In Minnesota, the conflict between ordinary Americans and ICE, the struggle against ICE, the resistance, has reached what could be called, in American history, the brink of civil war. The last time it was the National Guard, and the National Guard is organized by each state and the federal troops, and the government forces had such major disputes, and there were such big conflicts with federal law enforcement, was during the time of Martin Luther King, the era of I Have a Dream, which was the 1960s, during the American Civil Rights Movement for Black people. Many white people in the conservative regions of the South, ordinary folks, I'm not talking about any high-ranking officials or elites, just regular people, ordinary people from backward, conservative areas. The rednecks just couldn't accept it, letting black and white children attend the same schools. They simply couldn't accept it. So the local National Guard, that is the state's own National Guard, also couldn't accept it because they were local people themselves, after all. Then the President of the United States, the president at the time ordered the military. I remember it was the 101st Airborne Division or maybe the 82nd Airborne Division, which are the most elite fighting forces in the US military, to go directly to that state. Was it Little Rock to protect black children going to school? Uh, when elementary school started, the federal troops drove their own military vehicles, fully armed, carrying machine guns, and escorted the children to school for class. Everyone remembers this, right? In Forrest Gump, there's that classic scene. At that time, the internal conflicts in the US were very similar to today. Today, ICE, that is ICE in places like Minnesota, a blue state, is arresting people. The resistance they encounter and the local so-called white leftists, Democratic Party organizations, these protests are just the same. They get physical, even using knives and guns. It's pretty intense. So, although we support President Trump's actions, his initiatives, and these laws, and the urgent need to uphold the dignity of the country's immigration laws, there's no time to lose. But as for ICE, they really are a makeshift crew. Trump often puts together these makeshift teams with lots of temps, faces covered, and they just open fire at the drop of a hat or start beating people for no reason. Is that really necessary? Why do you have to do it like that? Why are you covering your face? For example, at the border, we often see ICE. ICE does not cover its face. But when they went to arrest people, all faces covered, and they were very rough with their hands. Yes, sometimes they even arrest the wrong person. They arrested the citizens. A while ago, a veteran of the Vietnam War, Miao veterans were arrested. It's so sloppy. Fuck your mother. Didn't you figure things out before you arrested them? You arrested your Vietnam War hero? Of course, that's not an illegal immigrant. So in this kind of situation, it makes ordinary Americans really annoyed with them. They're really fed up with this ICE thing. The level of annoyance is kind of like, what is it like? It's kind of like when we were kids in Beijing, friends from out of town, friends who didn't have a temporary residence permit, at this time of night, if you were out on the street, walking on the streets of Beijing, you would be stopped by something like ICE, by this kind of Chinese. Chinese police would stop you and ask, "Do you have a Beijing household registration? I want to hear you say something." It's just like ICE in the US. They'd ask for American. If they heard an accent, they'd know you weren't local and ask, "Got a temporary residence permit?" If not, bam, they'd catch you. It's just like ICE. They'd tie you up, throw you in a car, and take you away. Take you to Changping to dig sand. Why take you to Changping to dig sand? Because when you get caught, you definitely don't have a penny on you. You can't afford a train ticket, so you'll earn it yourself, like by digging sand daily. They pay 8 or 10 yuan for 15 days of digging sand. If you're from Guangdong, the train from Beijing costs more. They'll buy one for you, put you on the train, and deport you. It's really just like that. It's really just like that. So back then, when I was 20 years old, I was really annoyed by these actions in Beijing. I didn't have to worry about being taken away by them myself, but I had empathy because they were just like us. And they were doing the lowest level jobs in Beijing, like selling breakfast, cleaning up, doing janitorial work, working really hard for very little pay. They didn't do anything to bother you or provoke you, and yet you just so roughly take people away like that. Of course, if you look at it from, of course, there are many theoretically from a legal perspective. This shouldn't be happening. They should apply for a temporary residence permit. But in reality, the law is one thing and human feelings are another. So this issue is facing very serious challenges in the United States. ICE's current actions in the US have sparked public outrage. President Trump also stated today, in the future, each state, if they don't invite ICE in to enforce the law, then we just won't go. Hey, see, what were you doing earlier? You should have done it earlier. What were you doing before? Now you've affected things and triggered such a huge wave of protests. You are going to lose the midterm elections in November 2026, if I recall correctly. The midterm elections, keep this up and you'll definitely lose. So he has to pull off something big. Old Wang doesn't oppose it, but he's not a fan either, so he ends up offending both sides. Well, there's nothing I can do. When I run this channel, I don't need to deliberately please anyone. We just say things as they are. Trump defending border security, that's the right thing to do. There's really nothing more to say about it. No country can possibly allow illegal immigrants, tens of thousands at a time, to just walk in like that. That's something no country would allow. But then you send a bunch of people who haven't received any professional training. Those kids haven't had any professional training, haven't even gone to school. Some of them haven't even graduated from high school. Just a bunch of temps. In other words, These are just some little punks, street thugs, hooligans, and then you put them in police uniforms, give them police gear, and send them out on the streets to arrest people. They get $300 for every person they catch. This is the current ICE policy. Do you really think this is appropriate? Don't you think that if you keep doing things this way during the law enforcement process, all sorts of unimaginable situations will arise? Because ICE is the police. Let me tell you, police officers are professionals. A regular police officer, an FBI agent, or just a normal cop, a sheriff, it's really hard to get into the FBI. To become a police officer, you have to pass physical tests over and over again. Have the temporary workers ICE is hiring now even passed the tests? That one question just stumps them. Have they passed? You've expanded your staff by so many people. Aren't they all just temps? How could you not have problems then? It's just like urban management offices. Urban management is just like our Chengguan in China, exactly the same. Urban management itself is right. Every city in any country should maintain a relatively clean state. But your urban management officers have to be qualified, they have to be licensed, they have to be trained in law enforcement. But you hired a large number of low quality people, petty thugs, and made them urban management officers. Of course, they're going to beat up ordinary people like hell. This is just fucking ridiculous. The people will end up hating you to death. Because the masses, they're not always that rational. The people will just ask you, what the hell are you doing? You have to know. ICE arrests people at Home Depot, arrests people at elementary school gates. That's a bit too much. But these people can't possibly be local thugs. ICE recruits go through professional criminal background checks and are sent to the Virginia headquarters for training. Come on, you guys are dreaming. Look at those interviews where ICE is there. A young guy is just standing there saying, I didn't even graduate high school and I still make 20K. And then there's a protester. The two of them are just chatting, and the protester curses at him, saying, I finished college. I went to college and all that. My annual salary is $220,000 a year. Not 20,000, 200,000. 200,000. Whatever you do, I also make 200K. Damn. I didn't even go to high school. Well, I didn't graduate high school and I still make 200K. This just doesn't seem right. That's it. Can ICE really be compared to the Chinese CCP's urban management officers? I don't know about that. But from what I see, their behavior is really similar. I'm not afraid to offend you guys. Whatever. Watch if you want. If you don't, then get lost. Damn. It's just like how they beat people up. They just grab people and slam them down to the ground. Damn. And then they just start going at it, no hesitation. Honestly, I think the urban management officers can't beat them. The urban management officers aren't as tough as they are.